So a little bit of a spoiler alert, the Ride 17 compared to the Ride 18, those are very, very similar shoes, and I probably will end up picking it up because of how much I like this shoe. But if you are looking to save some money, go get yourself the Ride 17. There haven't been enough changes to make it worth it in my mind. You get to make that decision for yourself. If you're like me and you like the latest and greatest, you might go buy the 18 anyways, but definitely a solid shoe, definitely a solid purchase if you're thinking about picking up one of those two shoes. Hi everybody and welcome to today's video. My name is Matt and this is What Matters to Matt. And yes, on today's video, we're going to be talking all about the Ride 17 and what it's like after 500 plus miles. To get a disclosure out of the way right off the bat, this was a shoe that I purchased with my own money. Nobody's paying me to make this video. Nobody's telling me what to say. My thoughts and opinions are definitely my own. So as with most of my reviews, we're going to go down through the upper, the midsole, and the outsole, and ultimately you're going to be able to make the decision whether you think the Saucony Ride 17 is worth your hard-earned cash. Of course, since this is a long-term review, we will be talking quite a bit about the durability, but we are going to start with talking about exactly why I bought the Ride 17 in the first place. And I would say the reason why I bought the Ride 17 in the first place starts with this shoe right here. This was the Saucony Ride 15. I bought this a few years ago now. It was a good, solid daily trainer. It felt pretty nimble. It didn't have an incredibly high stack height, but it did have that EVA foam. And when you get into the winter months, when you get into training here in Eastern Canada, that EVA foam gets really, really stiff, really firms up in the cold weather. And that became a bit of a problem for me. I logged lots of miles through the summer, but in the spring, it just wasn't the best shoe to run those winter months with. That brought me to the Saucony Triumph 20. Now, the Saucony Triumph 20 has quite a bit more stack height than we saw in the Ride 15, and they've included a Power Run Plus midsole in this shoe. And this shoe, in fact, is probably my favorite running shoe of all time. Maybe that's a little bit of nostalgia because it's been a couple of years now, but it's still, I think, at the top of my list for favorite shoe of all time. I just felt that it was sort of my perfect daily trainer. That TPU midsole gave me a lot of protection and enough energy return to get me through a variety of paces of runs, and it didn't firm up that much in the cold weather. So when I heard they were putting the Power Run Plus midsole into the Saucony Ride 17, I was all over it. I wanted to buy this shoe. On paper, it sounded so much like the old Triumphs. They've done so much to change the Triumphs in the Triumph 22, but I thought this was going to be my new version of the Triumph. That was really the main reason why I ended up purchasing the Ride 17. Replaced my favorite shoe of all time. And just to give you a little bit more of a comparison, on the Triumph 20, we've got 37 millimeters in the heel and 27 millimeters in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop. And on the Ride 17, we've got 35 millimeters in the heel and 27 millimeters in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. Now, what that means is if you're a heel striker, you're definitely going to feel the extra 2 millimeters that you have in the heel of the Triumph 20. But if you are a midfoot, forefoot striker, really the front of the foot, there's the same amount of foam under your fat pads, under your toes, that you're going to feel that in the Ride 17, similar to the Triumph 20. But they still ran quite a bit different. And everything I read, everything I heard was that they didn't necessarily firm up this foam between these two shoes. What I do feel happened is the geometry changed quite a bit. Now, the Ride 17 is a little bit fatter throughout the shoe, the waist of the shoe in particular, and the shape of it. You're going to see a little bit of a different shape, and that creates a little bit less flexibility. Over here, we've got a more stable ride. Over here, we've got a little bit more fun ride, a little bit more energetic. And you can see when you just do this pinch test and squeeze with the Triumph 20, this actually collapses quite a bit. Now, that means it's a little bit less stable. When you go over to the Ride 17, it's a little bit more stable. Now, is that entirely a bad thing? No. One of the things that I really like about the Ride 17 is that in comparison to a lot of other daily trainers that are out there that may have a little bit more energetic, a little bit softer foam in today's market, the stability on this as just your standard daily trainer that can safely log lots of miles is better than some of the other shoes that we see on the market in a similar price range. No Last 5, I'm looking at you, but I'm probably gonna take you for a spin soon enough and do a full comparison. But the Ride 17 for me became that solid daily trainer. It replaced the Triumph 20. Wasn't quite as exciting, but still got the job done. Definitely didn't take the top spot for my favorite shoe of all time. That's still the Triumph 20, but close. More stable, less fun, good shoe. All right, so now that we've talked about why I actually bought the Ride 17, let's go down through the parts of the shoe, starting with that upper. And you can tell that this is sort of your classic daily trainer style upper. There's padding around the heel collar, but not too much, not too puffy. Same as the tongue, you do have some padding, but not too much, not too puffy. There is lots of structure back here in the heel. Lockdown was pretty good, and it does fit true to size. The one thing I will say is Saucony got a little bit cute with the lace loops here, this system, and I find that it can be hard to cinch down the midfoot and get a tight fit as you're lacing it up through the shoe. And that became not a big problem for me, but something that was a little bit of an annoyance because I really like to lock down my midfoot. I didn't have any problems with getting a good lockdown in the shoe, and you can actually notice that I did not do a runner's knot here. I had it in there for a while, felt like I didn't need it, was actually a little bit more comfortable without it. So overall, upper, really comfortable, pretty standard daily trainer. Not great on breathability, but that wasn't a concern for me when I bought this because I was running it through those winter months. Also, if you're not currently subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. You're going to see a lot of shoe reviews like this. You're going to see a lot about my training as I train for a spring marathon coming up in 2025. You're also going to see a lot of just my general thoughts around running and fitness and how I can be better to be the best for the people that are the most important in my life, which is my family. If you are currently a subscriber from the bottom of my midsole, thank you so much. I said that the other day and it sounds so corny, but I wanted to say it again, so there you go. So now we get to move on to talking about the star of the show, and it is that midsole. Saucony decided in the Ride 17 that they would put the Power M Plus material that we found in the Triumph 20 and the Triumph 21 into the Ride series. Now that is a TPU beta material, and I am so glad that they did. So as I mentioned earlier, it does really well in the winter. It didn't firm up on me that much at all. Every shoe firms up a little bit, but not as much as you're going to get out of an EVA. And I do consider the Power M Plus to be a little bit of a Goldilocks in terms of daily trainer foams. It's not too firm, it's not too soft and squishy. Just gives you some energy return, some bounce back, and a whole lot of protection, which makes it perfect for me in a daily trainer. It's not as energetic as you're going to find in some of the race day foams, but it certainly gives you enough energy return that you're able to pick up the paces when you want to, and it's not going to hold you back and feel too soft, too lost in that foam. As mentioned earlier, we've got 35 millimeters in the heel and 27 millimeters in the forefoot for that 8 millimeter drop, and that almost feels a little bit on the low end when it even comes to daily trainers nowadays, which is bonkers over where we were just a few years ago. But I find since it's not incredibly high, that means that stability is really good on the shoe. And what I mentioned earlier when comparing this to the Triumph 20 is that it actually has a pretty wide base here. It's pretty wide in the midfoot, pretty wide in the forefoot, and actually even pretty wide in the heel for a daily trainer of this size. And at first, I wasn't a huge fan of that. I thought, oh, this shoe has gotten a little bit blocky over what I remember in the Triumph 20, which I ultimately was comparing this to. But what it did do for me was when my legs were tired, when I needed something to baby me just a little bit, I was willing to give up some of that squirreliness, some of that energy return, some of that fun that I found in the Triumph 20 to get more stability out of this. That meant that my hips, my knees, everything was always working on stabilizing me while I was out there on the run. Just had to work a little bit less. So you gave up some of that softness, that fun that we found in the Triumph 20 to get something that was a little bit more stable. It's not a stability shoe. It's definitely a neutral shoe. I'm really not in need of a stability shoe, but it gave me enough to protect me beyond just soft, squishy foam. It protected me with lots and lots of stability when it comes to today's daily trainers. And we can also briefly touch on the outsole before we get into the overall durability and how it's held up over those miles. And this is Saucony's XT, I think it's XT 900 rubber, and it's, you know what, it grips pretty well in all surfaces. I haven't really had any complaints. It hasn't been great, it has been stellar. Certainly Puma grip is definitely better. Continental rubber from Adidas is definitely better, but it's done the job. I haven't had concerns when I've been out there on the run with the outsole in this. And the tread pattern, there's a good amount of protection here. There's just this one exposed piece of foam, but you can see really, even though I run this on several different surfaces, this hasn't been chunked up at all. So overall, outsole really gets the job done. And I think that's sort of what we're getting out of this shoe, is that you're getting the job done at an affordable price. It did gain quite a bit of weight over the years between the 15 and the 17, but for me, well worth it in a daily trainer. Not quite as nimble as the 15, but still definitely in the ballpark of where I want a daily trainer when it comes to versatility. You're able to pick up the pace and the weight doesn't seem to get in the way. You feel it when you're on those longer runs fans, but it definitely doesn't get in the way from doing the daily trainer task that you'd want it to do. Not a speed day shoe, definitely gets the job done for your daily miles. Also, in some of my videos, I think I just did it, I'll have to watch it back, but I end up looking down over my glasses, and I think that's a teacher thing. So sorry if I'm doing that. I'm not talking down to you. I'm just a habit. Try not to talk down to my students either. Okay. Moving on. So the main event and why you're probably watching this video is how has the durability been with the Ride 17? It's been great. It's held up really, really well. The upper, there's really no chinks in the upper's armor, maybe a little bit back here in the heel where you see it starting to wear back here on the heel. And that's pretty typical for shoes around this mileage for me, that we start to develop a little bit of hole, but not a concern there for me. The rest of the upper almost looks like the day I bought it. I didn't have any lace loops break for me. I know that was a concern for a couple of different people. Now the midsole in this shoe, the midsole on this feels like it did on day one for me. It hasn't done anything wrong. I did find the one thing about the Triumph 20 was eventually when I got up to a similar mileage, it started to soften up almost too much and wasn't as good as it was on day one. But in the Ride 17, for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the wider base, maybe it's because of just the geometry of the shoe, it feels like it did when I first bought the shoe, which is incredible. And the outsole, you are going to see some wear, and there's some wear up here on the toe, and there's some wear back here around the heel, but overall it's held up really, really well. And the exposed midsole, like I mentioned earlier, hasn't gotten chunked out at all, even though I've run this on so many different surfaces. So overall, after 500 miles, if I was somebody who wanted to continue to run this, you could probably get at least another couple hundred miles out of this before it felt necessary to actually retire it. So this is a mile eater. It is a beast of a shoe, and I think if you purchase this, it's going to last you a very long time. So all that to say that durability has been great. Now in terms of dislikes that I have with Ride 17, because I try to find some dislikes that I have in some shoes. One might be the weight. I feel like if there was some way that they could make it a little bit lighter, which I think they did in the 18, but really not enough to make a huge difference, that would be exceptional, because it would become a more versatile shoe. It's versatile enough now for a daily trainer, but it would be even more versatile and be able to pick up the paces even more if it felt just a little bit lighter, a little bit more nimble on the foot. The other thing is that it's not super exciting. It is a daily trainer. It's going to allow you to log lots of miles. It's going to protect you well in terms of a daily trainer, but it's not super exciting. So every time that you lace up the Ride 17, you're not going to go out and be wowed by the experience that you have. You're just going to know that you're going to get a solid, good daily trainer that's going to support you through lots of miles. And sometimes I like that excitement even in my daily trainer. So if I was going to pick at the Ride 17 more than anything else, it would be the weight, and maybe it's just a little bit too neutral, a little bit too plain, not quite exciting enough. That's it, guys. That's the end of the video. Durability has been great on this shoe. I am absolutely happy that I purchased it in the first place, and I am absolutely happy with how well it's held up after 500 miles. Even though it's officially retired from my rotation, I have no problem with taking this out every once in a while just for kicks, just to reminisce on how good this was as a daily trainer. My name is Matt, and this has been What Matters to Matt, and ultimately what matters to me most is my family. I'll see you guys in the next video. From the bottom of my midsole, holy frick.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.